Chapter 11 is on choosing foods for health and fitness. Some of us follow this type of diet. It's called the SAD diet, which stands for Standard American Diet. And this is the Western diet. This is where our eating habits are not exactly the healthiest anymore, because we eat a lot of sugar. We eat food that's high in fat. We eat food that's high in salt. Look at this image over here. We'll eat burgers, fries, like fast food, right? Chocolate, candies. Those are all food that contributes to soaring disease rates. So the disease rates are higher and higher now, partly because of the foods we eat. Think about how many people are suffering from obesity, diabetes, heart disease, even cancer. All of this is attributed to our diet. So if you look at everywhere we go, let's say if you actually, let me give you an example of watching TV. When you watch TV for 2 hours, what happens is you'll notice that in that 2-hour time span, you're going to see 3 to 5 fast food advertisements. So it's enticing you to eat bad. If you go on social media, you're going to see lots and lots of fast food ads. And the top 3, they say, are Subway ads, Starbucks ads, and McDonald's. Think about Uber Eats and Skip the Dishes. Those are quick ways to call in our fast food order right from our phone. So it's so convenient that we're inclined to do it, but we don't realize how it is bad for our health. So when eating, we really need to opt for smaller portions. So even though sometimes, if you look at the cost, it might be cheaper to buy let's say we're buying junk food, it might be cheaper to buy a big bag as opposed to a small bag of chips. But we should refrain from that, okay? Because it's in the long run, it's better for our health if we opt for smaller portions as opposed to the larger jumbo-sized portion. And anytime we have a bad habit, or even if we wanted to develop a new habit, and when I say new habit, it could even be like driving a new route to work, or you know how when the New Year's date change and you're writing the date on each and every paper or on documents and you have the old year and not the current year, it takes 21 days, 3 weeks for you to incorporate any change in routine. So even with nutrition, if we are eating the SAD diet, the unhealthy diet, and we want to start incorporating the healthy food, just take small changes, and for 21 days, change your so maybe like eat an apple every day instead of a bag of chips or something, and do that for 21 days. After 21 days, it will be very easy for you to embed that into your routine. So the trick is 3 weeks, or 21 days is all you need to change any habits, any bad habits. So this slide is looking at dietary guidelines that come from the government. So they're government documents, and they are created by nutritional experts, so by registered dietitians. And basically what they're saying is if you follow the guidelines that you see on the slide, you will be able to prevent certain chronic diseases like obesity, heart disease, diabetes, right? So it's what you look at when you're looking at the slide. I think we all know this, right? We have to be physically active. We have to have a healthy weight, be at a healthy weight. Choose to eat fruits and vegetables and whole grains. So if you follow the dietary guidelines, we would be able to prevent certain chronic cancers. So filter through information. What this slide is referring to is that when we're looking at diet, we want to choose diet that's low in fat. We want to limit sugar consumption. So sometimes we're inclined to drink alcohol, or we're inclined to drink pop, for example, which has a lot of sugar. We should limit that. Find food with less salt, and drink alcohol in moderation. In fact, they say that no more than 1 alcoholic drink per day for women, and no more than 2 alcoholic drinks per day for men. That is what the textbook says, because moderation here is key, right? We don't want to overdo it. It can affect our health. So this is Health Canada's suggestion, and we did go over this in the previous video, but we know that the major change now is that when we're looking at protein food, they're really stressing on the plant source food, eating plant-based, so like tofu, beans, that kind of stuff. Half your plate should be filled with veggies and fruits. And the drink of choice is water. And so here, this is where I was saying earlier, right? When we're looking at alcohol, no more than 1 per day for women and 2 per day for men. Now, I don't know if you guys have heard of this term, but this is called cruciferous vegetables. And these are vegetables that have that leaf-like structure. So like broccoli, right? Let's see what else we can do. Kale, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, like they all have the leaf structure. They have leaf structures that's known as a cruciferous vegetable. And these vegetables are excellent in vitamin A and C. In fact, if you eat these vegetables, you can prevent cancer. That's what they say. The National Cancer Institute is saying, like, try to eat these vegetables because it can decrease your risk of getting cancer. When we look at fruits and vegetables, you know how there's fresh fruits, there's frozen fruits or vegetables, and there's also canned. The best one, what do you guys think? What is the best type of fruit to have? Yeah, definitely the fresh one, right off the vine, before they spray any pesticides on it too. And so this is the best one because it's packed with all the nutrients. The frozen one is your second best option. And the reason why, well, actually, one point to note here is that when you go shopping and you pick up like a frozen bag of fruits or vegetables, shake the bag. Because if the contents are not moving around and it's just one big block of ice, then that means that what happened was it thawed, okay, so it melted, and then whenever it melts, what happens is the nutrients just come out of the food and it goes into the water. And so when it refreezes, what happens to the nutrients now, they're no longer in the fruits or in the vegetables. Now all the nutrients have leaked into the block of ice. So it's really important that if you choose to have frozen fruits and vegetables, make sure that the contents are not in one block, because that's bad. All the nutrients will be on the ice and not in the fruits itself. We want the contents to, we should be able to feel the fruits and vegetables in the bag if it's a frozen bag. And then canned is the least desirable choice because it goes through immense heat. You know, for it to be safe, when it gets canned, there's a lot of heat that gets into it, and whenever you have so much heat into that fruits and vegetables, it destroys the vitamin B to be specific. So it's the least desirable choices because it's the least way for you to get nutrients in. So fresh is best, then frozen, then in the can. So here are some guidelines. Children require fewer calories because they are smaller, so they don't need to eat as much as we do as adults. People who are, sedentary, or people who just are not as active, they need fewer calories. Like, the more active you are, the more calories you need. If you're not moving, then you don't need to eat that much because you'll just gain weight then. And so people who have a small body or people who are inactive, right, they need less calories, but people who let's just see what it says here. So yeah, if you're inactive or you have a small body, eat fewer calories. If you have a large body and you're active, you can eat more calories. When we're looking at calories, if we eat too much calories, we're going to end up gaining weight. If we eat fewer calories, we're going to lose weight. So here's a diagram that kind of explains it. The amount of calories you take in is this the same amount of calories you take out. So if you eat like 2,000 calories a day and you burn 2,000 calories a day, then your weight's going to be the same. You're not going to lose weight, you're not going to gain weight. If you eat 2,000 calories, let's say, and you burn 3,000 calories, so 1,000 calories more, for example, then you're going to lose weight. So whenever you burn more calories, whenever you expend calories, is what we say, you will lose weight. But if we eat too much and we're eating like the bad stuff, which has a lot of calories, and then we're not working out or watching what we're eating, and so we can't expend or remove those calories from our body, then we're gonna gain weight. Okay, so this is kind of a diagram that shows that if we can't expend calories, we're gonna gain weight. But if we can expend all those calories out of our body, then we're gonna lose weight. And on page 276, they actually give ideas on how we can lose weight. So apparently, if you snip peppermint It actually suppresses appetite. So next time you're hungry, try sniffing on peppermint. They also say if you stare at the color blue, so it could be like a blue tablecloth or a blue plate or anything blue, apparently that also suppresses your appetite. If you're not familiar on how to use chopsticks, try using chopsticks for a week. It's going to slow down your eating, which will ultimately help you lose weight. When you're eating something, like let's say you're eating pasta or salad or whatever you're eating, after every bite, put your fork down. Chew, and then grab your fork again, take your next bite, put your fork down. Every time you put your fork down between each bite, what's happening is it's slowing down your eating. And maybe you can feel full earlier. We just go at it. We're not going to know when we're full. And then another recommendation in the textbook is that make dinner your smallest meal. You probably would have eaten well for breakfast and lunch. Dinner should be your smallest meal. Okay, so with obesity, more and more people are becoming obese because of the standard American diet. And unfortunately, this affects all age groups. So it's not only adults, it's also kids, could be seniors. It is the second major cause of death. Okay, so obesity is causing heart disease, it's causing hypertension, which is high blood pressure, it's causing stroke, diabetes, and even cancer. So it is a huge problem all over the world. Now that's why it's so important to have a balanced diet and to be active. In fact, in a week, if you can expend 3,500 calories, so if you can burn 3,500 calories, more than you eat, more than you consume, you can lose 1 pound of body weight. So just remember this for the test. The key word is 3,500. If you can burn or expend 3,500 more calories than how much you eat, so let's say you're eating 3,000 calories, for example, but you can burn 3,500 calories, then you can lose 1 pound of weight. Okay, this is when we're looking at the week. So in 1 week, if you can expend 3,500 more calories than consuming, then you can lose 1 pound of body weight. So again, if you expend 3,500 calories each week, then you take in, you will lose a pound. And over time that adds up and you can lose more weight. So 30 minutes of physical activity is all that we need. And so it can be in short bursts. That means in a day, and 30 you can do 15 minutes here and then 15 minutes there, and then you get your 30 minutes in. So it doesn't have to be all at the same time. But sustained activity level, so being active throughout the day is the best way for weight loss. So here we can see that sitting, you only lose 1.5 calories per minute. But if you're running, you can lose up to 12 calories per minute, right? So the more active we are, the more calories we can burn. So walking is 4 calories per minute, swimming is 11 calories per minute, running is 12. So really, really important that we incorporate physical activity, we are active, and there are so many easy ways we can do that. So take the stairs instead of taking the elevator, ride an exercise bike while you're watching TV, dance more, park when you're coming to school, park far away from the building entrance so that it forces you to walk. If you're going for lunch, for example, see if you can walk as opposed to take the car. So small ways we can incorporate physical activity into our lives so that we can remain healthy. And so there's many different types of physical activity. There's the aerobic, which is the cardio, right? When they're running, for example. There's strength training, which is lifting weight. That helps with bone strength. Okay, so it prevents osteoporosis. And then there's stretching, which helps with flexibility. So lots of ways we can stay active. Now they say nutrition and cancer are linked. So if we eat a lot of high fat or sugary food, our risk of cancer increases. So we need to say no. We need to stop eating those high fat and sugary food. We need to be physically active. They say limit the intake of red meat. So if we eat red meat, limit that, because that will decrease your risk of cancer. Same thing with alcohol, limit that, limit salt, and eat foods of mostly plant origin, so beans, tofu, that sort of things, because all of these can help you decrease the risk of cancer. Now when you look at the word diet, We normally think diet means, when someone's on a diet and they're not eating. But diet actually means what you eat, the food and drink regularly consumed. So diet literally means the food and drink you eat or consume. But the more common definition that we all use for diet is that restriction of food and drink, right? So to lose weight. So when we're dieting, we're not eating and drinking as much, and our goal is to lose weight. And you can see here, there's so many different examples of diets. Zone diet, Atkins diet, Weight Watchers, right? There's so many different ones. But what I'm going to focus on is these diets that are shown here on the slide. So I'll talk about the top part, the vegan diet, in a bit, but let's talk about the raw vegan diet. So raw vegan diet are people who follow this diet. What they do is they only eat plant-based, raw, and unprocessed foods. No animal products, so they're not eating meat, they're not eating any dairy products, and no milk, no cheese, because that comes from animals. And they don't cook any food, like, when you're cooking and you put the heat can remove the nutrients, so they don't cook food. And so they'll eat something like this, for example. There's the macrobiotic diet. And the macrobiotic diet, I didn't know about this, but it's basically a strict diet, and it says that it claims to reduce toxins. And so you can eat whole grains, you can eat vegetables, but you don't eat foods that are high in fats, sugar, or anything artificial. So no artificial ingredients. So what you do eat is the whole grains, veggies, beans you can eat. You can eat seasonal fruits, you can eat nuts, you can eat seeds, but no meat, no dairy. There are certain fruits and vegetables you can eat. There are some that you can't. But the goal of this macrobiotic diet is to reduce animal products. So that's why you're not eating meat. To eat like locally grown foods that are in season. And then to consume meals in moderation. So that's what macrobiotic diet is. Basically, it's like they eat a lot of Asian vegetables. They avoid sugar. And oil, but they do eat fish. Okay, so they do eat fish and seafood. They don't eat the animal meat. These are levels of vegetarianism. So there's vegan, and vegan basically means that you don't eat any meat or any animal products. So when I say animal byproducts, so you're not eating eggs, you're not eating dairy, you're not eating honey, because they all come from animals. Meat, so gelatin comes from meat or pork, for example, so we're not eating gelatin either. That's what vegan means. Lacto-vegan means you're vegetarian, but you can have lacto, you can have dairy. Ovo-vegetarian means, again, you're vegetarian, you're not eating meat, nor are you having any dairy products like milk or cheese. But ovo means eggs. You can eat eggs. And lacto-ovo means, you're a vegetarian, so you can't eat meat, but you can have eggs and dairy. There's also other terms like politarian, which means you cannot eat poultry or eggs or dairy. I take that back. So politarian means you cannot eat red meat, fish, or seafood, but you can have chicken, eggs, and dairy. And pescatarian means you cannot eat red meat or chicken, but you can have fish, seafood, eggs, and dairy. So just know these terms for the test. So the textbook is recommending, and all the nutritionists are all recommending, dietitians are all recommending that the proteins should now be plant-sourced, plant-based. They're healthier. So tofu is good, seeds, nuts, beans, soy products, eggs, right? Those are all great sources of protein. What they're saying about vitamin B12, because there's concerns about vitamin B12. So people who are vegetarians or vegans, let's say strict vegans, what happens is they don't get enough vitamin B12 because vitamin B12 is found in animal protein, so it's found like in milk and meat. And so true vegans, they don't consume any of this, right? So we're concerned because they're not getting their vitamin B12. And if you don't get vitamin B12, it can cause like anemia, which is like low iron. You can get tired. You can get like tingling in your hands and feet, depression, poor memory. You can even get sores in your mouth and on your tongue. What's good to know is that if you're a lacto or ovo vegetarian, that's actually good because you can get B12 from milk or eggs, right? So lacto is milk, ovo is eggs, so at least you can get the vitamin B12 that way. But if you're a strict vegan, then you don't get that vitamin B12, which can be a concern because it can cause sores in your mouth and on your tongue, as well as other symptoms as well. So paleo diet, this is a diet that we think of our ancestors, that when they were hunting, what were they eating? They were eating whole fruits and vegetables. They would hunt and they would get lean meats or seafood, nuts and seeds, and that's all they would eat. So it's basically foods that's only eaten by hunters and gatherers. I'm sure we're all familiar with the gluten-free diet. So this is a diet that they avoid gluten. So anything like bread, cakes, pies, croutons, pasta, potato, chips, or tortilla chips, right? Because what happens is anything gluten has anything, so grains, okay? So when you think of gluten, think of grains. It's basically anything that gives a dough gluey texture. Like when you're making it, it gives you a dough gluey texture, which is grains. And so what happens is people who have who eat this, that it can upset their tummy. So reaction to gluten in food can also cause celiac disease. And celiac disease is a disease that damages the small intestine. And whenever we eat something, that the food goes into our small intestine, and then the small intestine absorbs all the nutrients from the food. So if our small intestine isn't working, then we're not able to absorb all the nutrients. And that's what happens with celiac disease, where it damages the small intestine. The Mediterranean diet is actually a really good diet. This came from Greece and southern Italy, France, and Spain. And what they're saying is that if you follow the Mediterranean diet, you actually have less chance of heart disease, diabetes, and cancer. And if you look at the foods they eat, they're eating healthy foods. So fish, not that much red meat, they have vegetables, grains, olive oil, and some wine. But all the foods are mostly low in saturated fat, or high in fiber, and high in fiber. So this is a good diet to follow. Okay, so let's look at food safety. Now, when we're cooking, when we go to a restaurant, sometimes we're not able to, even though it looks spick and span and really clean, we can't tell if there's any bacteria in there or not. And so the key thing that I want to point out over here is that bacteria is really hard to see. We can't see it, we can't feel it, we can't smell it. So any bacteria can contaminate our food. And the most common bacteria are listed over here, and we may have heard of these three, for example, Salmonella, Listeria, and E. coli. Those are the most common types of bacteria that are found, that can make us sick. And as soon as you eat this, within 30 minutes, you can start falling really sick and have an upset stomach. But sometimes it can take up to 3 weeks for you to feel that symptom. So 33 million people in the United States, they actually become ill each year from the foodborne illnesses. I know this has happened to me. I'm sure at some point it has happened to you. We can get sick from what we eat because of the bacteria. So what can we do to avoid this? What can we do to avoid us and our family from getting sick? So we're going to look at these 4 components. We need to clean our hands. We need to separate the meat from anything else, from the vegetables and fruits. We need to cook it at the right temperature, and we need to make sure that we put it in the fridge if we're not eating it. So let's start with clean. Every time before you cook, you wash your hands with soap for 20 seconds before and after handling food. Washes away all the bacteria so bacteria can't enter into our food. If we have cutting boards or dishes, make sure you really wash it well with hot, soapy water. And they recommend using paper towels to wipe the counters as opposed to cloth towels, because the cloth towels, when it stays wet, it harbors bacteria. And if you see, so clean the refrigerator often, because if you see liquids, if you see anything wet in there that leak from packages, it can harbor bacteria. So we want to keep it as clean as possible. So that's what we're saying for clean. For separate, so imagine yourself, going grocery shopping and you have a cart or a basket. Really important that you don't mix the meat, like you don't pile the meat onto like your vegetables. You don't let it touch, because you want to separate it in the fridge. You also want to separate it on the counter. You also want to separate it in your buggy or a trolley or your basket when you're shopping, because the bacteria can transfer. And so if you have a cutting board, best to have 2 cutting boards, one for meat and one for vegetables, and even another one for bread. So you could even have 3 cutting boards. If you decide to have 1 cutting board, make sure you really wash it very thoroughly with hot soapy water. Anytime anything is in contact with the raw meat, really important that we wash it very thoroughly, because this is a common way that people can get sick. And use separate plates for raw and cooked meat. So let's say you're cooking raw meat, so you have a plate for raw meat, you put it in the pan, it's cooking. Don't put that cooked meat back into the plate where the raw meat was. Like, separate it. Use separate plates. You have 1 raw plate and 1 plate for cooked meats, because you can reintroduce bacteria that way. When we're cooking, it's really good to use a thermometer to figure out whether your food has been cooked properly. Never ever eat ground beef that's still pink. Pink means it's raw, pink means it's not cooked. Always cook eggs. Never eat eggs that are raw, because they can make you sick. And when you microwave food, make sure that there's no cold spots in it. So make sure that it has warmed thoroughly. Every part of the plate, for example, that you warm should be warm. There should be no cold spots, because then it hasn't cooked properly. The bacteria hasn't been removed from it, if there is any bacteria. And so anything that you're reheating, it should be boiled or cooked to 165 degrees Celsius, so really hot, so that we're getting rid of any bacteria. And then chill. So we want to keep our food, if we're not eating our food, we want to keep it refrigerated within 2 hours. So don't let the food stay out more than 2 hours. Now, leftovers, typically you want to eat it within 3 to 5 days. Don't keep anything in your fridge for more than 5 days, because now you can get sick. There's a chance you can get sick, so freeze it if you have to. When you thaw food, okay, I'm guilty of this. Sometimes, like, I'll take out meat and I'll leave it outside on my counter, but really it should be thawed in the refrigerator. It should be thawed on the counter in room temperature. So you can thaw food in the refrigerator under cold water, not hot water, not warm water, or sometimes in the microwave. If you're marinating, marinate them in the refrigerator, right? So once you're marinated your meat or anything that you're marinating, the chicken, put it in the fridge. Let it always marinate in the fridge. And then do not overpack the refrigerator. If we stuff our refrigerator, the cold air can't circulate, and we need cold air to circulate all over, right? So we want to make sure that we don't overpack the refrigerator, so the cold air can circulate properly and keep our food nice and cold. This is like a thermometer that shows that if we leave our food between 40 degrees to 140 degrees Fahrenheit, or 4 degrees to 60 degrees Celsius, if we leave it out, the food can get bad. So either we put it in the fridge or freeze it, or we boil it and then eat it right away, because if we leave it out, in room temperature, for example, it can go bad. Last slide over here. Things to keep in mind when we're working in the kitchen. So lead is something that you can get from the ceramic dishes. So if we're basically, to reduce your exposure to lead, don't use any ceramic or lead crystal containers to store food. Use them very sparingly for serving food only, but don't store food in it. Microwaving is it can be bad, because there's adhesive and polymers that from the package that can come into food. So you know how we get like microwave dinners, for example? That microwave dinner, transfer it into a plate and then microwave it. Don't use the box that it comes in, because those box has like bad stuff, like adhesives and polymers that can get into your food and can make you sick. When we're looking at canned food, always wash the very top part of the canned food and eliminate any dirt or dust from there, because it can make you sick. So wash it before opening it. And then avoid storing food under the sink or any other areas that can get wet. And the reason for this is because insects and rodents, for example, they're attracted to very dark, damp places. And so if you put food underneath the sink, for example, or underneath the sink, then what can happen is those rodents or those insects can come into those areas and kind of like damage the package and open up the food that's in there. So you want to avoid any damp, dark places, any places that can get wet, because it can do, the insects and rodents can, damage the food there and make us sick if we eat it. All right, that's all. Thank you.